Thank you so much to Paul. That was really interesting. I don't know how I'm going to follow that. I'm just going to jump in and explain. So the aim of my presentation is to explain a little bit about the potential for AI and ML that I can see for school data managers. So really, I want to convince people to create and design AI and ML specifically for us school data managers. So I need to explain that I'm a data manager in a private school in Madrid, in Spain. And that's part of a bigger umbrella of over 80 schools across more than 23 countries. So I'm just one person in my one school. Some schools have got a department with 2 or 3 data managers, and some schools don't have my position at all. So I don't have anything to do with business data management other than maybe just the control of the payment systems and the fees, that sort of thing. There are business data managers for that in other departments. Okay, so if I don't deal with business data, what do I deal with? Okay, it's surprising how much data we need to collect on our students and their families. So it all starts with the admissions process. Before a child becomes a student at our school, our admission departments collects personal data during the process. And this starts with basic things like the names, the date of birth, addresses, and it gets a little bit more sensitive when we go in to ask about the parent's job and work. So yeah, we also have entrance exams. And if the student is coming from another school, we ask for a report from that school about academic performance and behaviour. So it's important for us to obtain consent forms, especially for photos, for example. Photos is actually a really big thing. It's really important to make sure we know which students are not allowed to have their photos online. This is especially true when you're working in a top private school where the parents of the children are likely to be high profile people like CEOs and politicians. So, I don't want to have I want to have nice photos on our social media, but we've got to be really careful like who these photos are of. So this leads me to my first question. I'd like you guys to try and put this in the answers in the Q&A section or the chat. It's okay. What age do you think that children can legally consent to the management of their own data? Go ahead and put the answers that you think, and it's just a number. I can't actually see those. I can't see if anybody's written anything in there. Hang on, there we go. Okay, I can see some answers there. Great. Right, well, actually, it's a bit of a trick question. So I'm in Spain, which is in Europe, and we're covered by GPDR. Right? So GPDR in general says it's 16, but that can be lowered to 13 years old by this particular country. So we in Spain, we have it at 14, set at 14 years old. That means we have to be really careful when we're dealing with other online platforms from outside of Spain, because they may have a lower age of consent and their protocols might be slightly different. Okay, so we've got internal exams and external exams. So we get a lot of information from the internal teachers, and we exchange information and data about exam results with the exam boards for GCSE and the IB diploma, for example. So an anecdote, actually, when I was preparing this presentation, I remembered like back in 1999 when I did my A-levels, I remembered that they published our results, all of our names and all of our results in the local paper. Like that was traumatic for me. It was really horrible, and like major cringe. And that's something with GPDR that we absolutely have to avoid. So this report, for example, you can see that I've covered all of the names of the students for data protection, but this I can't even show it to you in this meeting, so let alone in a newspaper. So this report is an example of the report that we need to provide for every single form group. These are all the names of the students, and these would be the names of the subjects that they take, and these are the grades that they get. So this is really useful for department meetings when teachers discuss the needs of the form as a whole, and they can spot any struggling students with the color coding system. Obviously, we have to report to the parents, and this is an example of a report that would go on the parent portal. We do have a bit of an issue actually with blended families nowadays. So as you can imagine, if a father has children with two different women, those children are likely to all have the same surname, yet we need to make sure the access is only granted to the relevant parents, the relevant mothers of those children. So that's a bit of a problem for data protection for us. And then the third type of analysis that we do is to compare student cohorts. So this might be comparing ethnicity. These are just from Google. Hey, these are not from my school. This is this is comparing ethnicity, and this is comparing gender. We can also compare teaching groups or subjects, for example, and it's really important for quality control. And it'll help us highlight our strengths and weaknesses of the school and consider equity and bias. So the medical team and the SEN team, the SEN team collects information about special education needs, and we have a team of 2 nurses who deal with all of the medical information, which is of course highly confidential. So both of the teams need to be able to filter the data that they have and sometimes communicate important things to the relevant staff members, for example, allergies or learning disabilities. And safeguarding, before I talk about this, let's take a little look at the second interactive question. So, well, it's not interactive, but let's just, this is actually a question that I was given in a job interview for a school data manager. So imagine that you are a data manager in a school and somebody comes up to you and they've lost their timetable. They need you to print it out. And at the printer or the photocopier, they mentioned that there's a teacher that makes them feel really uncomfortable. They stand a little bit too close to them. And no, that they just feel a little bit like creeped out by this person. So what would you do with that information? You can put it in the in the chat or in the question and answers. I mean, for example, would you tell the form teacher? Would you tell the safeguarding lead, or use the safeguarding software to raise a concern and give visibility to all of the staff except that one teacher in question? Or I don't know, like call the police, you know, like what would you do? Report it to the head teacher. I don't know if there's any answers in the question answer thing. So well, actually, the answer is that every school really has to prioritize safeguarding, and everybody has a protocol, and that we know exactly what to do in those circumstances. It's actually really important that we take every single concern very seriously, and also we have to protect the data of all of the people that are involved. So we have to be very careful who we share that information with. Ding. So everybody has a responsibility in the school for safeguarding, and we need somewhere especially secure to store all the concerns that staff may report. There needs to be a way to assign visibility and to deny visibility to certain staff members. And we also need to communicate this information, maybe to assign actions that need to be taken. For example, by a form tutor might need to call parents about a bullying episode. Quick question, if you can put this in the chat rather than the Q&A, because I can only see the chat. Does anybody have children? Have you ever been a child? Do you have any concerns about your children's data? And if you do, just put that in the comments and maybe we can talk about it a bit later. It'd be really interesting to get your feedback to see what you think about data regarding your children. Thank you. So the last big source of data that we have, I need to get this one here. So the last big source of data that we have is external learning apps. So we actually use something called Seesaw, which is an amazing app from the United States, which connects teachers to their students and also to their families. So everybody's connected and only can see the data or the schoolwork, for example, of the relative student. And something that's really interesting with GPDR is that the servers have to be within the EU. And something that I'm so pleased that I managed to get was I managed to get Seesaw to transfer all of their data about us from the United States to their EU servers. So that was really lucky. So it means we can use them for next year. Okay. So we have a massive amount of data about students and their parents. And as you can see, schools are actually really vulnerable to various types of hacking and breaches and leaks, etc. We're a target, and I find it really interesting to figure out why. Let me read you this quote from a cyber expert from the University of Surrey. He says, IT is not their core business. They don't have big IT teams. And if they're all using standard software and a vulnerability is found in it, then the criminals will quite quickly realize that. So what he's trying to say in a really nice way is that the school staff have a big responsibility, a lot of data, but in general, we're specialists in other areas. We're just not techie enough, and that makes us vulnerable. In New Zealand, the chief digital officer recognizes that school computer networks are well protected in general, but students and staff often use their computers and phones at home for purposes other than school work. He says students are using things like their school issued email addresses as their username on a whole range of websites and systems and apps and services, and a small number of those has been compromised. So obviously we're in the need of a solution, and for the majority of our data, we have a school management information system called ISAMS. So actually the selection of an MIS is considered so important in the UK that the UK government website, gov.uk, actually has a whole section dedicated to helping schools make that decision. So we have ISAMS, which is a database organized on the front end into modules that staff can use to view and modify information about the students and the staff as well. The modules cover different aspects of school life. For example, there's a student profile module, a registration to take the register, an HR module, reports and printing modules, and so much more. So yeah, although using ISAMS or any kind of MIS is a kind of one size fits all, there's quite a bit of flexibility for data protection and privacy. So for example, as data manager, I can control who can see or modify certain aspects of each module. I can set up systems where co-workers can assign visibility or deny visibility to sensitive data. We're also really grateful for the secure connection with Azure AD and two-factor authentication, which, although not all staff are keen to use, is definitely a plus in terms of data protection. I can also use SSRS and create or modify any of the reports that the staff need, like fire drills or academic reports, etc. So let me just remind you that I started in this school in September, and before me, they didn't have a data manager as such. So in terms of data governance, I've had to come in and basically start from scratch. The basic task of figuring out where all the data is held in the school is actually really difficult. I don't know if I mentioned before that some departments, they will literally write an email or a Word document every time they need to record information about a student. And we have departments that use super cool Excel sheets, and they manage and analyze their data in a super cool way. So if the first step of the plan was complicated, the solution, which would be making sure that everything is on ISAMS, is actually also really hard. And this is because, as we said before, the school staff are not IT experts. Many people are resistant to change, and they just like pen and paper. We also have to remember that the great majority of our email accounts belong to students, teenagers, who are terrible when it comes to online security. And we have to be really strict with them, making sure that they don't use their school email to sign up to dodgy websites or download apps or anything like that. So in general, we're left vulnerable to many types of data breaches, which of course I want to avoid. And the last challenge on my list, which is probably a bit different to many of your industries, is the fact that the custodians of the data, or the people that need to have access to and write about and change this data on a particular student, changes every year. So every September, the students move up a grade. They move up a school year, right? And so they've got different teachers and they do different subjects. And then every few years, they go up as key stage, and that changes and they go to a completely different section of the school. So my challenge is making sure that the data relevant to that child is passed up with the child to the next custodians, and that the previous people, the previous teachers, eliminate everything that they had as if it had come to the end of that life cycle. So yeah, my role in data management is to identify aspects of data management that can be improved, put those systems in place, provide checkpoints and controls, but also to provide training in 2 languages to the staff. Okay, this is the bit that I wanted to talk about, and I'd be really interested in knowing your ideas about this. So we were talking about automation. It's really great if you could automate things. We can already automate some things, and I'm so pleased that we can do this. For example, we've got a rule-based flagging system. So if, for example, a student misses 3 periods or 3 days in a 2-week period, then we can create a flag or an alert, a communication, an email, or to the form teachers or to the parents, or an SMS, for example. That's brilliant. I love it. I'm really happy about that. But I would like to have the technology for AI to do that sort of thing, like AI going through the registration and noticing things that are odd and saying, "Hey, would you like to do something about this? Is this normal, or is this we've seen this is a bit unusual?" Something like that. That would be really cool. It would be really, really helpful. Rather than me having to know in advance what the what the rules are, I would like AI to tell me that something is a little bit unusual. Also, we really do need some no and low code options. As you can probably tell, I'm not a computer scientist. I'm sure we could somehow figure out how to get some low code options with AI support. And I'm going to give you a real life example. So when I first started in the school, I was asked by the admin team to give a list of the students per form in the classroom if there was a fire drill, and that what they wanted was a list with the name of the student, parent one telephone number, parent two telephone number. What I got from my MIS was this. So I got 2 lines per student. Obviously, with a bit of coding, I can go in, I can change this myself. But wouldn't it be really careful? Wouldn't it be really amazing if I could just move these little things around in some kind of window and say to an AI machine, look, this is what I want. And an AI could create this table for me without me having to know anything about SQL or SSRS or anything like that. That would be amazing. AI and language models, yeah, ChatGPT, of course. I use ChatGPT every day for writing and writing communications, emails, etc. Obviously, we use it for blurring faces and photos, so that we were only allowed to publish the photos with consent. So anybody in the background has to be blurred out. Speaking to teachers, they have been using ChatGPT for writing reports and for making quizzes for their students, which is fantastic. Twinkle is a online it's like a resource thing for teachers. They've got loads of lesson plans, etc. But they also have this AI resource where you can put in all the you need an account. You use your school email to make an account. You put in all the names of your student. You put in their gender, and then you put in their attainment targets, whether they've met the targets or not, and then it creates a comment, and teachers find this so useful. But I scream in horror because I'm thinking, where are you sending all of this data about our children? They've got your school email address, so they know by the domain name where you're coming from, and they know a list of all of your students and what grades they've got or how they're performing. So that's absolutely a big no. So I would really like some kind of GPDR specific support for teachers, so that they know how to, they know the dangers of these sorts of things. And if it were possible to have our own systems to write comments in this way, with maybe within the MIS that we're already using, that would be amazing, because we definitely need to be able to take advantage of that. It would save teachers a lot of time. Machine learning, oh my goodness, I've been thinking about this for ages. You know, the way that insurance fraud, you can figure out by the text that people write. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could analyze texts that were written by staff about students and by the students themselves, or even analyze student artwork in the same way that a psychologist would do? And we could use this to kind of scan for dyslexia or ADHD, anxiety, depression, or even safeguarding concerns. That would just be an absolute dream for any school or anybody that deals with children in general. So that would be my dream. That's the end of it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I really would be interested in knowing your ideas, if you've got any concerns, or if there's any ways that you could see that AI and ML could help us as school data managers. That would be really great.
Thank you, Charlotte, for your presentation and giving very useful insights about using the AI in the education. We have a question from Luis. He asked, how mature is data management in the context of schools? You mentioned a fair bit of variability. What needs to be done to improve the situation?
So is that question written down somewhere? Where? I'm just having trouble hearing that. 1 second. Or could you repeat it for me? Is it in the Q&A?
Yeah, of course. Yes, it's in the Q&A. And how mature is data management in the context of the schools? You mentioned a fair bit of variability. What needs to be done to improve the situation?
Oh, it's really difficult in schools because like I said, I started in the school right at the beginning, and they didn't have a data manager before me. So we've been using other types of specialists to help. We've got safeguarding specialists, for example, or data protection specialists, which are similar. But there is a lot that we need to do, and I have a plan that I'm working on, especially working on data governance, those sorts of things. Yeah, there's definitely a lot that most of those things that I mentioned, for example, improving just knowledge, general knowledge of the teachers, improving their access and their ability to use technology. Yeah. Mhm.
And thank you for your response. And there is another question from Luis. Could AI be used in the classroom to provide more engaging lessons?
I think teachers are already
Actually,
using AI.
yeah, actually, that was my question too, because I was wonder too mentioning about how AI to be engaging in the education and about learning process, not just for saving the data of the students, how it can be used for the improving the students' learning process.
Actually, that's so interesting. I think ChatGPT-4, for example, has collaborated with, or Duolingo has collaborated with ChatGPT-4. And what they do is they have like Duolingo is a thing for learning languages, right? So you go in and blah, 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 and you do lessons every day. And then you can kind of speak with people as well. But you can speak with they have a chatbot. And this chatbot is AI, and it notices your mistakes and then it corrects your mistakes. And it tells you what you need to study, and that sort of thing is definitely already available in learning platforms. I don't think it's going to take over the role of the teacher. Teachers use it, for example, ChatGPT, they use it for making quizzes. I've used it for making quizzes that you can put on the internet, for example, interactive quizzes, and you get the results. You can know the entry level of the student. Just simple for children who finish their work early, for example. Or actually, I think it's really important how we train the children to use AI, and we don't want them to be obviously cheating on their essays, that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit like the calculator. I think the inventor of ChatGPT, he said something like, in the beginning when the calculator came on the market, everybody was like, this is going to be awful. This is going to be the end of the world. And in the same way that we all had to learn how to responsibly use a calculator in our exams, I think we all have to learn how to use these language models and the access that we
Yes.
do have right now to AI.
That's great. Charlotte, and I have another question. Already we have talked about the open source AIs that are available for parents, for students. And what about the particular specialized AI that should be developed for the education? How these AI tools can work and how it should be developed? Does it done anything before, what be it by assigning the jobs to the some particular company, something special is developing right now, or we are just limited to the using the OpenAI AI tools?
I think we're very limited in the same way that Paul was speaking about data manager budget. I think the budget in education is even lower. So we're definitely limited to open source, but by being limited to open source, we're absolutely even more limited by GPDR. So we've got a big problem.
Yeah.
These ideas that I mentioned were ideas that I've been thinking about as I've been going along doing my job. Hey, wouldn't it be great to have this? But I don't have people to get in contact with and say, hey, this is really great, but could you modify this so that I could actually use it? For example, the Twinkle thing, the automated report writer, we can't use it. It's fantastic, but we can't use it. So
Yes. Thank you for answering all your question. I think I cover most of the questions. And if there is anything that you want to add to your presentation, we can hear you clearly.
no, I would be really interested in speaking to people if they have any any ideas about how to move forward with creating any kinds of AI or language model or machine learning, and being able to get that into education. That would be really interested in knowing if anybody has experience in that.